"We're not paying for your little $2,000 vacation," my boss said, denying my work travel. A letter from our largest client arrived during the board meeting. The CEO read it. His expression froze. He slid it to our lawyer, whose only question was, "Where is she?" I was elbow deep in a shipping manifest from Shenzhen, trying to track down a pallet of misrouted fan blades, when Tyler leaned over my cubicle wall with the grace of a man who thinks cologne is personality. "Hey Britt, I need you to fix whatever's going on with Omega Plastics. They're whining again." Whining, that's what he called a full stop on a $1.2 million supply contract. I nodded. Like always, scribbled it down and quietly rerouted the shipment using 3 favors 1 bride fine expedited customs fee and a 6-minute phone call in broken Mandarin. Problem solved. Tyler would later tell the board it was his pressure tactics that got things moving. That was my life. A human band-aid for corporate paper cuts. The quiet fixer. No spotlight, no fanfare, just fluorescent lights, tepid coffee, and a LinkedIn page that hadn't been updated since Bush was in office. Vendors knew my name. The forklift drivers in Des Moines sent me Christmas cards. But upstairs, I was as noticed as the gum stuck under the break room table. And hey, since you've made it this far, let me just pause the existential dread for 1 second to say something real quick. If you like hearing stories like this, the kind your boss wouldn't want you listening to, hit that subscribe button and throw us a like. 90% of y'all binge these tales like vending machine peanuts without subscribing. It's free, and it genuinely keeps this caffeine-fueled team from jumping into a shredder feet first. Alright, back to the chaos. So yeah, I kept things moving. When our Detroit plant had a hydraulic seal crisis that threatened to delay 3 weeks of output, I called in a favor from a Serbian vendor I hadn't spoken to since 2008. He still remembered me, called me Brittany of the Blizzard because I once navigated an entire procurement deal during a snowstorm using only burner phones and sticky notes. I got the seals flown in on a private courier jet. Tyler sent a thank you email to himself. My reward, a last-minute calendar invite to a leadership roundtable on vendor visibility hosted by Tyler, where I was asked to take notes and fetch a fun sparkling water for the VP of Marketing. I grabbed her a room temperature LaCroix, typed up 12 pages of logistics insight, and watched as Tyler plagiarized my summary into a PowerPoint that somehow managed to use Comic Sans. But I didn't complain. I didn't raise my voice. I kept showing up. Early mornings, late nights, I became the department's invisible net. Everyone fell, and I caught them. Then came the email. It was from Lazar Kovacs, Hungarian founder of a legacy microchip supplier we'd been using for years. One of those behind-the-scenes companies no one in the C-suite remembered, but without which our top-selling product wouldn't even turn on. He was cordial, but blunt. Their factory was shifting production priorities. If we wanted to stay on the buyer list, we needed a rep at the annual Eastern European Vendor Summit. In person, in Baykesk Saba, I forwarded the message to Tyler with a simple request, approval for a $2,000 travel expense. I laid out the urgency. I warned that this was our last shot to lock down supply for a component that powered over 40% of our revenue. I didn't even add per diem. He called me into his office and laughed. $2,000. For what? A sightseeing trip and some goulash. We're not paying for your little vacation, Brittany. I didn't respond. Just smiled that tight-lipped frozen smile women learn in middle management when we're being slapped with a condescending insult disguised as financial prudence. He waved me off and muttered something about real priorities. That night, I sat in my dark kitchen, still in my work slack, sipping flat Diet Coke and listening to my dog snore. My laptop was open. I stared at flights, economy class, 11-hour layover in Munich, middle seat. I booked it, on my own dime. I took 3 days of PTO and burned through the last of my Marriott points on a 3-star hotel, with a lobby that smelled like boiled meat and unresolved trauma. Before I left, I pulled an old folder from my filing cabinet, one I hadn't touched in years. It had photos of a rollout I led back in 2012. When Kovacs' daughter had flown to the States for an on-site audit and her interpreter bailed. I stepped in, helped her navigate a system crash, medical scare, and a 12-hour flight delay. We stayed in touch. Christmas cards, the occasional happy birthday email. I didn't know it yet, but that forgotten kindness, buried under a decade of ignored emails and forgotten thank yous, was about to become my golden ticket. The morning after I booked my self-funded flight to Bekeshkala, the office felt heavier. Like the walls knew what I was about to do and were holding their breath. I moved like a ghost through the cubicles, dodging awkward small talk and microwave bacon fumes, all while mentally triple-checking my pitch. See, the thing about legacy components is they're not sexy. They don't make flashy investor decks or headline product launches, but without them, your best-selling product becomes an overpriced paperweight. Ours was a pressure calibration unit. Don't bother Googling it unless you love insomnia. What mattered was that it brought in over $1 million annually and was powered by one very specific chip made in one very specific Eastern European factory. That chip wasn't manufactured anywhere else, at least not yet, and that's what woke me up in a cold sweat. The night before the new vendor list Kovacs had quietly slipped into his email. It showed active discussions with a Chinese conglomerate and a German startup that had more venture capital than common sense. Both were circling hard. Hard Kivox was getting courted like the last girl in a Baptist youth group dance. And we didn't even RSVP, so I did what any logistics manager with a death wish and a broken printer does. I put together a one-pager proposal in 11-point Arial with actual bullets, not those stupid pastel smart art shapes Tyler loved, outlining why this vendor summit wasn't a vacation. It was a Gotham firewall, a last stand, a $2,000 insurance policy against the total collapse of our golden goose. I even added a chart. Tyler likes charts, especially ones with arrows. When I slid the proposal across his desk, he didn't even look up from whatever Slack thread he was pretending to read. You want what? Approval for travel to the summit. It's a chance to lock down a supply agreement. Kivox's, he held up a hand. The universal sign for I've stopped listening, but I still want to feel superior. We're not paying for your little $2,000 vacation, Brittany. It wasn't the words, it was the tone. Like I was some middle-aged groupie trying to sneak into Coachella with a counterfeit wristband. Like I was wasting company money when he just expensed $500 for team building escape room, where 3 interns got locked in a broom closet for an hour because no one knew the capital of Latvia. I opened my mouth, then closed it. What was the point? I could have recited every metric, every forecast, every fragile link in our supply chain. Tyler had already filed this under emotional female nonsense. I knew that look. I'd seen it before. Hell, I'd trained myself not to cry under that look. So I smiled. That dead inside, teeth-clenched smile women master around men who think charisma is interrupting someone mid. Understood. I said, thanks for the clarity. I walked out of his office feeling like a balloon someone let go of mid-helium filled, but under that, something simmered. Not anger, not even betrayal, just precision. Like I'd finally stopped waiting for approval from a system built to ignore me. Back at my desk, I emailed HR to confirm my PTO request. They replied with the usual automated form. I submitted it, attached a fake conference itinerary I mocked up in Canva, and made a note to bring back an airport souvenir so no one asked questions. Something with paprika or a communist cartoon dog. And I ordered new business cards. Just 100 Maddie finish. Burgundy font. Name, Brittany Sharp. Title, Independent Vendor Relations Consultant Company. Sharp Point Logistics LLC. I figured if I was going to be invisible to my own company, I might as well be visible to theirs. By noon, I had booked my hotel. By 2 p.m., I'd made a quiet call to Alina, the founder's daughter. I hadn't spoken to her in 6 years. She picked up on the first ring. Brittany, Alina, I got your father's email. I'd like to come to the summit. Silence, then a low chuckle. You always show up when it matters. I smiled for real that time. Not the workplace version. The real one. I always try. My PTO was approved with all the enthusiasm of a software update nobody asked for. No questions. No follow-ups. Just a bland email from HR confirming the dates. I doubt Tyler even noticed. Or cared. 3 days later, I was wedged into a seat in row 32 of a budget airline that smelled like wet carpet and bad decisions. Knees jammed against the tray table. Listening to a Slovakian baby scream like he knew I was flying toward a professional Hail Mary. The Columbus to Munich. Then a connection to Dubai, followed by a 2-hour bus ride to Beksega, a place that sounds like a sneeze and looks like a postcard from 1987 that got lost in the mail. I landed jet-lagged, half-deaf from the engine hum, and smelling like airplane nuts and existential dread. The hotel lobby had yellowed wallpaper, a rotary phone at the desk, and a vending machine selling off-brand cigarettes and shampoo. But it didn't matter, because the moment I checked in, there was a note waiting for me at the desk. Written in blocky, deliberate handwriting. Dinner on the terrace. 8 p.m., LK Lazar Kovacs. A man who ran his factory like a monastery, and whose handshake was worth more than most ND. I hadn't seen him in person since the rollout in 2012. Back then, we were piloting a joint system,